Meeting. For who?
It's for us. So everybody, I'm here with Jessie,
Hi.
and Kevin. Kevin's in the background working to make the electricity in this house very nice. So Jessie and Kevin are from the Healing Hands duo. And I am so happy they're here with me today.
We're really happy to be here too.
See? So,
we have lights again.
On. So
Kevin's working on the electrical. We're trying to do some EMF remediation today and mitigation in the home. So
Jessie and Kevin are both really, really smart. And so I wanted to talk to you about what they do and how they came to what they do, especially because I had some sessions with Jessie. Mm-hmm. So I had never heard of electro-medicine, the way you put it.
Yeah.
And this woman took such good care of me, and she took such good care of me, and she's so knowledgeable and wise. And so I want to talk to people about what it is electromedicine is. Like, what is it? How can you explain?
Well, electromedicine is kind of something that started a long time ago. I think usually you have to kind of get into some of the stuff that like Nikola Tesla was working on. Before we had allopathic medicine, a lot of people were playing with the idea of electromedicine, ozone therapies, things like that, to kind of really help the body through various different ailments. In most cases, a lot of the stuff was geared towards things like Rife technology. Sir Royal Raymond Rife had figured out that if you applied certain currents to the body or electricity or frequency to the body, you could actually like implode various different types of pathogens, whether it be bacteria, viruses, or even parasites.
Now, would you consider Lyme?
Yes. So the reason why my husband and I got into this in the first place was because we both contracted Lyme disease almost a decade ago. But it started first with my autoimmune disease, I had Crohn's colitis. And I started noticing that I was very sensitive to my environment, specifically electrically. And they actually have a name for this now. And Dr. Magda Havas, she really deals with a lot of this. And they found out that some people are overly sensitive to what they call electromagnetic fields. And those that do have this illness or this sickness, I guess you can say, or this condition, they call them EHS sensitive, so electro hypersensitive. The idea is that what ends up happening is you become very in tune with the energy around you, the electric energy.
Yeah.
But what it does is naturally what Magda Havas realized was that it not only, everybody is affected by it, not just those of us that are really sick. It just so happens that it doesn't allow the body to come back into proper resonance. So what ends up happening is the body's now in a state of fight or flight constantly. Well, everybody knows that if your body's in a state of fight or flight, this happens with stress too. And over time, stress can kill.
Yeah.
So if you can't come back into proper resonance, then what will happen is your body will start to develop, autoimmune-like conditions, and it'll also be more susceptible to infections. So, like I said, when we got sick 10 years ago, the first thing I started noticing, and this is something that Kevin was doing at the time because he's an electrical engineer, he decided he was just going to start up with Wi-Fi. And it was not but like a couple months after I started to develop my autoimmune disease. And I literally said to him, I don't know what it is that you did. I've always been super sensitive to my surrounding. I don't know, some people say I have like intuitive abilities and whatnot. So when I started feeling that the energy was off, literally my body couldn't come into this rest state. And so I got sick and I ended up in the hospital. He started going really crazy on all of that. He started doing a ton of research, and that's how we found people like Dr. Magda Havas, Royal Raymond Rife, Nikola Tesla's work. That's kind of how we were like, okay, we need to fix our diet, and I started getting into a lot of holistic healing with supplementation and stuff like that. I actually worked for a nutraceutical company for 8 years. I actually left my job because it was a high stress job. I left that position because I knew it wasn't really giving me anything in the way of my health. And then I actually took this position as inside sales to learn more about nutrition. So I did that for 8 years. And what ended up happening after the Crohn's disease was a couple of years later, we went to Mexico. And my husband came home and he had a bullseye rash on his face. And you know this, I was just saying that Kevin had this bullseye rash, and he literally started to go blind. And he had neurological issues. He, like I said, he could not see out of his left eye. Then he started having issues with speech. So it felt almost like not a speech impediment, but it was just forgetting words.
Word finding.
Yeah, word finding. Yes, you were saying that. And then what ended up happening was he started to just spontaneously pass out, which I think they call this POTS now. It's almost like when you stand up, you literally, your blood pressure drops and you can pass out. This was happening to him all the time. We could not get help in Canada. We went back and forth from doctor to doctor to doctor, specialists. I think we literally saw probably 60 different specialists.
Wow.
Paid ones and part of, our regular Canadian healthcare system. And that's when I was already working in the industry. So I was lucky that way. I had access to naturopathic doctors, holistic doctors, chiropractors, all that. And somebody had mentioned to me at that point, we think you guys have Lyme. But we had been eating really well and supplementing and stuff like that. And so we were getting, both of us were seeing results, but I started to kind of get a little more sick too. And then that's when I realized this doesn't make any sense. We're in our 20s. Why are we both getting so sick? And we're both, at the time, 26, 27 years old. Eventually what I realized, I was like, there must be a common denominator between the two of us. Like we must be suffering with some type of infection of some sort that is lowering our immune system to the point where now we're just getting everything. Because it wasn't just like we had Lyme and my Crohn's disease. At this point, I actually was diagnosed with all these problems with my spine. And then they actually found liver hemangiomas, which are these benign tumors on my liver. He started having other problems with his skin, psoriasis, all these random reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus, shingles, like everything you can imagine. There was something wrong with almost every organ at one point. That's when I said I found this one of my clients at the time. Well, it wasn't a client, sorry. She was kind of a client. She was one of the providers that was working for Metagenics. And she said, I think you guys have, and she was doing this because she was a practitioner for Lyme disease, which they call LLMD. So Lyme literate medical doctor, or Lyme literate ND. So she was an ND, not an MD.
Okay.
But they work together with MDs too. So she's like, I think you guys have Lyme disease. And so I was like, okay, this is crazy. And so the reason why I'm kind of getting onto this backstory is because I think a lot of people in the Lyme community are looking for alternative treatments because they can't get anywhere with like conventional allopathic medicine. This is where we had done all the diet stuff, all the supplement stuff. And I talking diets, we did like 60 different diets. It got us to a place where we plateaued. But then I was like, well, what are we missing? Like, what else are we missing? And that's when some of the Lyme doctors had said, if you're being exposed to EMF on a regular basis, you won't get better. Insert electro-medicine. And so that's where we started finding things like the Photon Genius, photon technologies. We're talking light therapies. We work with full spectrum light therapy, red light therapy, frequency medicine. And then, you've got various different things that are going to be into the heat therapies, which are still considered light, like you have near, mid, far infrared for detoxification. The reason for this is that, like we were talking about, Rafe, he found that you could implode pathogens. Everything has a resonant frequency. And if you've got the right frequency, you could implode pathogens. And that way it could be eliminated from the body once and for all. Insert, that's why we got involved in so much of that stuff, right? And then I was using these things continuously out of various different alternative practitioners' offices for both of us for like 4 or 5 years. And it started getting costly to do it. So I thought, this is crazy. Like I've been doing this for almost a decade. Why am I not doing this myself? And why don't I bring my own equipment to Canada? Because I was having to travel back and forth to the United States to use the equipment that we have. And when I called up the company, they were like, yeah, absolutely. We are looking for people to supply these services to people in Canada. So that's kind of how we ended up doing that.
Cool. So what I want to say,
Sorry, that
was really good. So what I wanted to talk about then is this Photon Genie experience I've had. And I'm going to go Photon Genie. So I think I was randomly writing stuff on the Facebook group that we were part of. We didn't know each other.
Yes.
And I was writing things like, I've tried this, I've tried that, I'm going to try this, blah, blah, blah. And then I think I wrote something about crystals, like what the fuck with crystals or
Yeah,
something.
what the hell do they do?
And then,
Whatever.
And then I get this message from her.
Almost as long-winded as I just did right now.
Yeah,
So.
I didn't know her. And she wrote, oh, Ina, please don't rule out crystals.
Yeah.
Our bodies have crystalline, well, I don't know.
Yeah, or crystalline structures.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And, you know, I've got this machine and and I said, okay, I'm going to stay open.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up checking it out, and it was like, wow. So she's going to explain what the photon genie is and how it works and about all those cool gases. So
okay, so the photon genius is kind of like for anybody that knows this stuff, it's kind of like a Rife machine. You know, that's going to be like a weird analogy, but it's like a Rife machine on, I would say, on like crack, and it's like a light machine, and it's like you know, a sauna. So you're going to get hit with near, mid, far, infrared. You're going to be getting hit with light therapy in the full spectrum. So it's not electrostimulating. Like a lot of people are using pulsed electromagnetic fields now, and my husband doesn't. I mean, it works. Most of those devices are FDA approved, and they work and they help to reduce pain, but it's a short-lived thing. And I was telling you before, it's almost like it forces the body to come back into resonance. It's not like it gives you. What our machine does is it provides everything you need in the ether. So it gives you the proper amount of light, the proper frequency, and the proper light waves in heat in order for your body to be ready to accept that energy into your body so that it can change. When you put this in conjunction with our water is structured water. That's why I said don't ixnay water or crystalline structure. There's a perfect resonance that everything has, but everything that is made by nature comes in a crystalline structure. It's actually geometrically, it actually looks like a honeycomb structure. So when you can rearrange water back into its natural state, it's more or less like the water that you find in fourth phase is what they call it. And this fourth phase water is kind of like what you have that happens between water that's about to freeze. So like glacier water, that's why it's so clean and pristine. You want to drink glacier water. It also erases all the water memory. So the thing is, water is a living substance. People are not aware of this. It's a living substance, so it holds memory. But imagine if you're drinking water that's gone through all of the different 90-degree angles under the groundwater, under city. That water is now picking up on the energy of everything that it
counters. Yeah.
So when you have it come into your house, you want it to be cleansed of that energy, so that when you drink this water, it can go in and you can create the crystals yourself in your body, which they call this water easy exclusion zone water. Naturally, it will also repel infections away, or even things in the water.
I didn't know it did that too.
So like what happens? So what it does is when your body's got a pure crystalline growing in it, what ends up happening is you become less resilient to infections, molds, funguses, other infections, COVID, all these things. Like I can't really classify, I can't really make any of those claims, but it also doesn't allow you to. I think it also allows the body to, it's more hydrophilic. So they actually say that it's wetter, so it will get into the cell and hydrate the body faster. So you don't have to drink as much water as well. So the idea is that you want to be drinking what they call this living water. The reason why I'm mentioning so much about the water is because if the water is properly hydrated, then you get into the machine, and then the machine also restructures all the water that already exists.
That's why you wanted me to drink so much of,
I want you to have water in you, because if the body's dehydrated, you're dehydrated. This is the thing about the body. 70% of the body is water, right? So if you're dehydrated, and people believe that all of our energy is held up in the ATP, which is like, in the cell itself. It's where we produce our energy in the mitochondria. But really, most of the energy is held up in the water. And that's where we're going to get into. That's the memory, the water. That's what makes you this pure crystalline structure, so that you could be not only resilient to, like we were talking before, healing is not just physical. It's, you're in the mind, body, and soul. Well, in order to be, in proper resonance, you need to work on all three of those things, and keeping the structure or the temple as clean as possible, drinking living water, having the proper frequencies around you, the proper that's the other thing about the EMF. It gives off a non-ionizing radiation, which a lot of people for the longest time said, oh, that doesn't do anything. It's not going to harm you because it's the heating effect on EMF. That's not true. Like they've done plenty of studies to show having these bad, or this radiation, not bad, that's a bad word. Having this radiation around you, it actually does
indirectly, what it does is it dehydrates and destructures the water in our body. So if you have no water in your body, technically the body's dehydrated and it's dying.
Yes.
And it's also going to be more susceptible because, like I always say to people, like, what are some of the biggest problems we have today? Fungus and mold are huge. Like, most people have candida. And if you let candida sit in the body long enough, it'll turn into a fungus. And it grows literally throughout our body. And, you know, what do you do when you want to get rid of black mold? What do? You take that mold, you put it outside, and what do? You expose it to oxygen and light. The machine is doing the same thing. The machine also creates nitric oxide in the body, which helps to cleanse the body. That's another thing, which kind of converts into hydrogen peroxide. You've heard people like literally drinking hydrogen peroxide to clean out their body.
Yeah, I sometimes put it in my ear.
Yeah, so you can put it in your ear, help with infections, but this is what the machine does, right? These machines do that. And you were using not only the Genius, but you're using the Genie. Now you have one of them for yourself.
Yeah.
It also creates ozone.
Yeah.
And ozone is, you know, I mean, now a lot more people are aware of what ozone is, and a lot of people use it for air purification in smaller amounts, because if you don't purify it through something like an oil, it could be damaging to the lungs. But there are other ways to put ozone into the body. You either can inject it, you could do transdermal ozone. And ozone technically was, again, something that Nikola Tesla was working on for a very long time. And he was using this because ozone was invented and what people used to use for infections before antibiotics.
Yeah.
And it was actually much more effective than antibiotics, because antibiotics usually only hit one infection, and then you become resistant to antibiotics. That's why everybody has to take more and more. And then we create antibiotic resistant bacteria. So now we have to take more and more antibiotics. We have to push antibiotics into our water, push antibiotics into our food, give our animals antibiotics, because everybody's full of infection. And most of this infection comes from not having a sufficient amount of light, water, and proper frequency.
Yeah.
If you can balance all three of those things, your body becomes resilient to almost every infection in the world.
So what I want to say is, Kevin and Jessie have guided me to reduce the EMF in my house. And so Kevin's doing some of that now.
Doing electrical work, yeah.
He put some filters for me in. What else did we do? We got the Q to do the scalar wave.
Yeah.
And then they both guided me to buy this structurized water.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, then I've got the water, I'm reducing the EMFs. Now I've just got to bring the light, and I have
You've got pretty much all
machines.
You pretty much have all three of them at this point to actually start.
And it's because of them. So I told Randall Kaiser, who may listen to this,
who may or may not, because we're filming it, but we're not sure if we're going to do this yet.
I told him about Jessie and Kevin, and he said, Ida, I think what you've got there are angels.
Where's my wings? Where are they?
And I said, that is so freaking awesome. Like,
I just think, like,
my face is turning red because it's just and if you can't see her like I can see her. And if you see Jessie's face, like, she's so beautiful. She's glowing. And she's got like just a few little freckles. Like, they're so
those
nice.
are probably age spots.
No,
I'm working on those.
Listen to her. Anyway, I'm sitting very close to her, and it's like, wow, you look 18. This close.
No.
Yeah. Anyway,
I have a couple of things that I'm working on right now. But you know what, guys? Light also helps to rebuild collagen.
That's right. I got the infrared, the near infrared. Right?
Yes, NIR and red light is really good for rebuilding collagen and connective tissue and reducing pain because of the heat, and it goes deeper. So that's another thing for ladies that want to. Actually, that's some of the places in the States that actually have the larger machine. They find them in a lot of dermatologists' office because it helps with skin ailments too.
Wow.
And
I just want my hair to, like, my scalp to grow again. Yeah. But anyway, so what I want to say about this is, I wanted to ask you, because the Genius, the Photon Genius, is frequency based. Can you do remote, like remote healing using it? or
No.
this is an interesting,
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, because there
Yeah.
is a lot of people that are doing remote
Yeah.
frequencies. Like there's other things that we've done in the past. I can't remember the name of this device, but it came with a hand cradle, and literally the frequencies could just be done right over the computer, and you would have the hand cradle on your end, and it would just
Wow.
be administered this way in. The way that the designer of this was skilling himself. The idea was to change the environment around you so that your body picks up from the ether. So that the idea is you're creating the ideal environment for a place of healing. So that that's like a lot of the other stuff that we have. Your environment.
You can't
allows
do that over.
Yeah. And so like the problem with some of these other devices that are out there, like, again, I'm not knocking them. Like, I think there's a place for everything, like PMF therapy. It's just that it's more forced in. It's using electricity to force the body to change.
Yeah.
Whereas it's almost like if you gave the body everything that it possibly needs, it would pick what it needs in order to heal itself.
It's an intelligence you're relying on.
It is,
like
yeah.
The intelligence in the body.
Yes.
The God source.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what was really big.
Randy, you like that?
Yeah.
The God source.
Yes, exactly. The unified, picking up from like these unified fields and all these things, and allowing your body to take what it needs. Because the other thing that I find with people who use the machine, and I've had this just recently, is that the machine isn't something that's a physical aspect for them. It's very emotional. Like people will come out of there emotionally in tears.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's what the body needed at the time. It wasn't something so physical. Maybe it's like an emotional release that it gives them. Or, some people, and then I find this too, where they'll get more pain after using it. And I say to them, well, it's almost like, don't let that discourage you, because as the body detoxes, you have to think about it. I always use this analogy with people. Imagine if you were, for many, many years, you were addicted to something, like a drug of some sort, and you decided you wanted to clean your body, and you wanted to go off of, like, I know this is like a heavy duty one, but like say you had like a heroin addiction, you got off. Was that going to feel good? You love that thing, you rely on it, and it's what you think you need to live and survive because it's an addiction, but you decide enough is enough and I want to heal from that. And then you detoxify that. Detoxifying, even with energy, is going to be kind of the same. We've picked up all these like negative imprints on our DNA and all this information on our DNA. So when the body's ready to release it, if it's ready, only when it's ready, it will not do it for everybody, because if you're a complete skeptic, the idea is that you hold that belief so tightly that you won't release anything.
Yeah.
And you'll hold on to all your crap. But if you're ready, then your body's going to go through this detox. And it may not always feel so good either. It may not look so good. You might get skin ailments. You might be going to the bathroom slightly different. You might stink. We were talking about that. Like you might have weird smells that come off of you. Again, I was saying the skin ailments, I see that a lot in some people too. Headaches seems to be a big one. Emotional release. Like I've had people that have used it in 3 days. They're like, I've been crying for 3 days. And I'm like, that's what
that's letting it release.
Yeah, that's what you're ready for, right?
Yeah.
So it's really like you were asking if you could do it remote. No, I think it's because it's almost like creating the perfect environment for you to come. And I think it's almost the intention, right? You're getting out to go do it.
Yeah.
So it's more of a commitment to get in it and do it, and then try to change some of those thought processes too while you're actually in.
And let me just say that it really helped that Jessie, it's not just that committing to being in the machine, knowing that Jessie's there to take really good care of you is part of it. Like she's a part of the treatment. Her energy.
My electro yeah.
So anyway, I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I just want to ask another question. I don't know if you can answer it.
Yeah.
So there's not too many of these machines in Canada, right?
Right. There's
Can
actually
we talk about that, or?
We can, but the only thing is other than ours, which we're pretty vocal about, there is only 2 other people that I know of, and one person's not vocal about it at all. So I wouldn't even be able to tell you where it is or anything like that, because they're not even seeing new people like at all. And then another person, to be honest, I think it was more or less purchased for personal purposes, and I don't know that they're doing it. So ours is the only one. However, if you're in the States or other places, like I know Germany, a couple of years ago, I was going crazy with them, and they were trying to open up like these like photon clinics where they just do that. And I know there's a place in Arizona, Sedona, that they do it. They like literally have a bunch of these machines. You can go in there, almost use them like a tanning bed, go in, get your session, and like out. It's just not going to be, the thing with that is it's just not going to be as personal, because some people will use the equipment like that, just like a sauna. But
It's not. It's not. It's an energy sauna. And the thing that I don't like about some of those setups is that I've seen people where they go in. I personally have heard about this for one person, and they're not really experienced in what they have, so they allow people to go in at really high temperatures and for too long of a period. And if you're in fairly healthy, if you're fairly healthy, you're not going to maybe have so many reactions to it. But say you went into a machine like this and you had cancer. So the body has a lot to release when you have cancer. It's a lot of toxins. So if you go in there, you could come out of there like throwing up. And if your body's not ready, because remember, when you're detoxing, you have to have all of your detoxification pathways open. The colon has to be working, the kidneys have to be working, the lymph has to be working. That's another thing about the machine. It's great at removing all lymph. Like it actually drains lymph fairly quickly. It's one of the reasons why I was sold on it, because I told you before I had really bad edema in my legs from my bowel disease, and it drained my legs within hours of using it. But you need to have that open. You need to have the liver open. Because if you don't have all those things open and you decide, oh, I'm just going to go in and start hitting at all of these different pathogens in my body, all these toxins, because it releases heavy metals and all these things. If these pathways are not open, you're just reabsorbing those toxins back into the body. And I've seen it where, because if you use it on high heat, it can create what's called hypothermia. Yeah. And hypothermia is used in other countries, controlled under the care of a physician. Because if you can do that, this can actually create apoptosis on cancer cells, so it can kill cancer cells. So the problem though that becomes with that is they say if you get into something, you're doing such high heat and you don't have somebody to monitor you, well, now you're creating sepsis. And that can be very dangerous. That's a bacterial infection. Yeah, that's where the infection is just being reabsorbed into the blood. And now the blood's too toxic. It can't remove all the toxins. So you're literally dying in your own poison. Wow. So this is the problem that I have with some people using this equipment without having the experience on it, because like I've seen some people in this, there's one place in particular I'm thinking of where they do that. And say if somebody goes in there and they don't know what their full workup is, and they say, okay, go in there and use it at 7 for the whole 30 minutes. Well, you know, what's going to happen? I mean, I've only ever heard of that happening once. So that's not to discourage people or disparage people like, oh yeah, like when you get into this machine, you're going to get sick, because that doesn't usually happen. And a lot of people that have it know, like it literally says, if you get in, you start very slowly. You start really low heat. That's what we did. Yeah. I didn't overdo it. No, and I never let anybody, even if they tell me, oh, I'm super healthy and I do like yoga and Pilates and I still do not let people get in at high temperatures. I tell people sometimes we do 15 to 20 minutes. Yes. We don't do more than that. Like I've been able to work my way up. My husband and I have been doing it for a long time. But I even remember the first time I used electro-medicine, I went too hard with even the smaller machine that you have. Yeah. And I was in bed for 4 days. Yeah. Because my body was just getting rid of way too much and it could not balance out. So it was like, okay, now I'm basically polluted myself with all this stuff. And now I have to find a way to get this out. But I mean, I was thankful for it because I feel like it did help to heal. It was part of my healing journey, right? Like everything together is what got us well again. And so here they are today helping me. I'm so lucky. Okay. So I think we've covered enough. That's like amazing information. Okay. And I think we'll have her on again and we'll take it from there. So okay, bye. Thank you for having me. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Okay, how does we stop this?